Moment to start. Good afternoon, good morning to some of you, and good evening to others. Welcome to IETA's COP30 preview webinar. We're very pleased to welcome a very distinguished panel of speakers and IETA staff who will brief you on what to expect at COP30 this year and what we would like to see among our outcomes. Now, of course, IETA itself will also be represented at Belém. We will be based at the COP30 Business Pavilion, which we are co-organizing this year with the International Chamber of Commerce, and where we will host a number of side events. Details of our program will be on our website shortly, so please keep an eye on that. Quickly through today's agenda, we're going to start with some very welcome opening remarks from Marcelo Brito, who's the Executive Secretary of the Consortium of Amazon States on expectations for COP30. Then Andrea Bonzanni and Agustina Condari from our own international policy team will present some key priorities for advancing carbon market ambition and implementation. Sandra Hani, who's the head of COP30 at the International Chamber of Commerce, will present the ICC's work and priorities in relation to COP and introduce the ICC and IETA Joint Business Pavilion. We'll have a short initial Q&A session before we move on to the final item on the agenda, which is our President and CEO, Dirk Forrister, who will host a panel discussion with government and business representatives who he will introduce along the way. There will be time also for some additional questions after the final session, so please do remember to post your questions in the chat box or wait till the end when we'll be inviting some live questions as well. So straight away, we're delighted to welcome to our webinar today, Marcelo Brito, the Executive Secretary of the Consortium of Amazon States. He will deliver some opening remarks on expectations for COP30. Marcelo, the floor is yours.
Alessandro, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you from various parts of the world. Well, we are really living under a great expectation. COP is coming on board next week with the meeting with the head of states. Everything is set, almost everything done. Remember, we are in Brazil. We like to leave some things for the last minute, unfortunately, but everything is done and everything is gonna be great. We're sure that. Thank you so much for inviting me for this webinar. I've been in close contact with IETA people in Brazil, especially with Pedro and Elisa, because the importance of the carbon agenda for the Amazon states. I don't know if all of you are aware with the size of the Amazon states. The 9 Amazon states represent a little bit over 55% of the total area of Brazil, densely forested in most of the states, And of course, the carbon agenda is really, really important to us, especially when you look of what is coming, at least for this short period that I consider the next decade. We're talking about programs of reforestation. We're talking about agroforestry. We're talking about a program for livestock agriculture and forest integration. So there is huge room for carbon projects among the region. Of course, at the same time that we live a positive expectation, we are a little bit anxious with some of the things that still come on board with hard decisions. The first one is at the hand of the Brazilian government and how we will proceed with the 6.2 agenda. So how we will consider ITMOs in our agenda, if we're going to be able to export and the credits, and if able, how much of them. So we still don't know how this will operate. The second one is the 6.4 that, of course, depend on a greater negotiation among countries, but is really worrying us. We're anxious about that because if goes as people are saying today, of course, we will block a major potentiality of the forest and heavily forest countries as Brazil. So we believe that in the end of the day, we can have the right people talking and the right agenda put in place to try to stabilize throughout carbon, at least to set a reduction in the differences between the North and South Hemisphere, bringing to the table the potentiality agenda that we have in Brazil, in Congo, in Colombia, Malaysia, Indonesia, and so on. So more than that, at the consortium, we are strongly working in order to improve integrity, in order to improve governance, to give you as an investor the possibility to take the advantage of these potentialities. We're going to be presenting a number of things at the COP. We will have a pavilion at the blue zone and another one at the green zone as well, so we can put together people who has and who hasn't the credentials for the blue zone. And we will present a lot of things on land tenure, on governance among the states, on the area of improving the quality of the worker base in the region. So many things will be presented. So I would like to welcome you all to Belém, and I want to put myself at your disposal if you need any help there. We can help. Pedro and the guys from IETA has my contacts, and I wish you guys all the best and a great webinar. I would like to apologize myself. I have to leave immediately for another meeting. I am preparing myself to fly to Belém in the next 3 days already. So I hope to see you there. All the best, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marcelo. Thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts with us. And I'd like to move on quickly now and invite Andrea Bonzanni and Agostina Kundari from IETA to present IETA's COP30 policy paper and some of our recent work, including our priorities for the upcoming summit. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Alessandro. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. So we do these COP preview webinars every year. This year it feels a little different because we're not expecting important negotiated decisions on Article 6. But still, as Marcelo highlighted, and as we will explore in the rest of the webinar, it will still be a significant COP for carbon markets for a number of reasons beyond the negotiations. If you move to the next slide, you will see a QR code to the policy paper that we published today. And no, one back. That's right. Yes. This is where we present the state of play for carbon markets entering COP30. And we also provide some of the key IETA positions on the items that will be discussed. So as I said, despite not expecting negotiations until 2028, there will be several agenda items focused on carbon markets. I listed them here in the slides. You'll find more information in the policy paper. We expect discussions around the synthesis report prepared by the Secretariat on the technical expert reviews that took place this year. This is in relation to the Article 6.2 approaches that have already started. On Article 6 as well, we will have the second ambition dialogue, and I'm really pleased to say that IETA has been invited to speak at the dialogue again, to provide our views on how Article 6.2 can increase ambition and deliver mitigation at scale. On 6.4, the supervisory body will report to the CMA, so to parties meeting at COP. So we expect some discussions to take place on the work that the supervisory body delivered this year, which has been significant, very large volume of important decisions, and methodological standards. But as you may know, we also had some concerns about the content of this decision. So we believe COP may be an opportunity for parties to discuss the direction the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism is taking, and I'm sure there will be some discussion during the panel later in this webinar. And then finally, the only real negotiated decision that is expected at COP30 is about the phase out of the CDM, which is still on the table. And it is relevant because with the final closure of the CDM, the remaining funds in the CDM trust funds will be allocated somewhere else, and they may be allocated to the operation of PACM to continue the operationalization of the mechanism. There's also going to be a large number of non-negotiated outcomes, some announcement and launches by parties and non-parties. We have a list of these key outcomes in the paper, and some of the people and organizations behind these outcomes are here in this webinar, so you will hear more in a few minutes. Next, we will also show some of the products that IETA has put together this year. If we go to the next slide, you will see the first one. It's a tracker that we have on our website. It's publicly available. It's free. We started tracking bilateral agreements between countries, laying the foundation of cooperation under Article 6.2. But as the implementation of Article 6 moved forward, we started to track letters of authorization as well. You have a snapshot here. Graph on the left is a list of unilateral authorizations. So you have the host country on the left and the entity receiving the authorizations. These are credits that are likely to supply the CORSIA market for international aviation. And in the middle, we have the bilateral authorizations. The buyer of all these authorizations is Switzerland, so far the only country active in this space. But we were very happy to see in recent week a new one of these. Chile authorized the first projects in its cooperative approach with Switzerland, and we expect these numbers to keep growing this year as well as next year. On the same webpage, we also have a directory with more information on each of these LOAs. We are tracking over 40 LOAs, 40 projects with over 20 variables tracked and analyzed for each LOA. So this is hopefully a helpful resource that will keep updating as the implementation of Article 6 moves forward. But this week we launched a second Article 6 tracker, which I will hand over to Agustina to present, my colleague Agustina Kundari. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. If we can move to the next slide. First of all, thank you for joining this webinar. Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon. My name is Agustina, and for me, it's my morning. And as Andrea said, we are launching a new tracker. We love trackers, but we believe that this is the best way to follow and to keep updating information about the implementation of Article 6. And as we are aware of the new cycle of NDC, the NDC 3.0 that are being submitted for the past few months, and we expect a number of new NDCs for the next week and also during COP to be presented. We know, actually, we have been working closely through the relationship between the NDC and the Article 6, as we believe, and we actually, we are sure that there's an important nexus between what countries are planning to do through the NDC about their targets and how they are using or the expecting use for Article 6. So in this new tracker that is available just now, so you can go to the IETA website or scan the QR code, you can check this new tracker that merged in a way the NDC submitted just until yesterday, because today I was checking and Côte d'Ivoire just submitted the last NDC, so it's up to 71 documents. This is live, this is hour by hour, so you can check the new tracker and the relationship with their NDCs. The Article 6, sorry. The idea of this map is combine two analytic layers. I won't take so much time, so you can check through the website the information, but the first idea is an individual country fact sheet, and as you can see on the bottom of the slide, if you click on the country, you can check information regarding the NDC 3.0 submitted, the target year, the expected use of Article 6, and other information that are relevant. And in the second part of the fact sheet, you can there is a summary of the engagement, the historical engagement of Article 6 among that country. We are analyzing a bilateral agreement under 6.2, GCM, if they had their DNA into place or not. So there is an information in a consistency way to present how the country is standing on Article 6. And the second layer of for this tracker is 7 thematic maps in a way to show how the world and the parties of the Paris Agreement are facing different information, just for example, if they are engaging under Article 6.2, if they submitted their initial reports or not, if they are engaging also through GCM, the mechanisms through GCM. So there is 7 thematic maps that you can scroll in and look how the world is facing Article 6 implementation, especially around carbon markets. Another thing I want to point out is that we understand that there's so many parties, and sometimes there are countries that are really, really small and difficult to achieve, so to get. So if you use the search bar and you type the name of the country, you will be able to check the information on the country that you are looking for. If we go to the next slide, there is a different way to present the information. We know that sometimes we need hard numbers to track the progress and the implementation of Article 6 and NDCs. So there is a second visual tool that are hard numbers related to the thematic maps that we develop. For example, that is the amount of NDCs submitted until yesterday. Today is 71, but it's up to 70. The number of countries that intend to use Article 6 according to their NDCs. So there is a lot of information in a practical way to understand and have hard information. Something that I really like to highlight about the data that we use to get this information is all the data are from public source and official source, such as UNFCCC, CARP, and the GCM Secretariat, but also we get some insight from our carbon market intelligence, so information that maybe is not yet public available, but it will be, so it's important for us to share with everyone. Closing with this, this is a public tracker too, so it's available for everyone who is interested to know more about the engagement through NDC 3.0 and Article 6 participation. And if we go to the last one, I won't take too much time on this. This tracker actually is in a way, is the second deliverable of a paper that we launched in June, I believe. If we can go to the next slide, please. So this is like the practical tool from this paper, Scaling Up NDC 3.0 Ambition through Article 6 that we present, I believe, by the mid-year. This paper was in a way, developed not only for governments, but also for private sector and key stakeholders who want to better understand how this relationship between NDC 3.0 and Article 6 implementation must be and should be. So in a way, and we expect to keep on working on this topic for 2026, we present three key elements or 3 stages for analyzing the NDCs submitted until today: the fundamental readiness or the enabling readiness and the operational readiness. We trying to find a practical way to present the engagement from countries through Article 6. And this is going to be the following, I believe, the following deliverable from IETA to start analyzing not only the NDCs, but also the political and the policies in place, as we understand that the NDC is a picture, but we need to watch the full movie for the next 5 years. So this is an interesting document if you want to know more about this relationship between NDCs and Article 6. And there are so many recommendations for governments and for private sector to better understand this and to have a better idea of how NDCs is not only a document, it's not only a policy document submitted by parties, but it's a key instrument to promote and to pursue Article 6 implementation. I believe this is my first slide, so I will give the floor back to Alessandro. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Andrea and Agustina. Thank you both for that view of our recent work and our look ahead to COP. I'd like now to welcome our new partner in the IETA and the ICC Business Pavilion, Sandra Hani, who will address us on the outlook for COP, her work going into COP, and also what we can expect from our cooperation on site. Sandra, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Alessandro, and thanks for having us. And really excited to closely work with IETA and the colleagues for this important COP in Belém. I think our collaboration has been very important throughout the past years, but it's great that we finally join efforts as well on the in-person presence. I'm just checking with the IETA's team in terms of my presentation. If not, I'm happy to. Fantastic. So I think it's good to start off with a bit of context, but I just wanted to also just explain for those that don't know us a bit our key role in the UN climate change process. So we are really bringing together the broader business community, 45 million companies really across different sector sizes and now in 170 countries. Really principal focus is really 3 areas. It's about, we are really known for our international dispute resolution services. The second is standard setting activity, so known for our standards. I hear a little bit of a background. Maybe someone should mute their mic. Thanks very much. So really also about setting standards, so known about for our standards in the banking sector, also the marketing code and different other areas, and then our key role in the UN system with our the standing role in the UN General Assembly, and then also the key leading business voice in the UN climate change process, as well as any other key processes, in particular also the World Trade Organization. So really trying to bring really the broad perspective and key insights into those discussions, in particular on climate, have been really there in the lead up to Paris. So working closely with organizations also like IETA, the run up to the Paris Agreement, particularly then once the rule book was finalized with regards to then implementation. So just in terms of a bit of context for this COP, I think it's important to recognize and keep in mind a few things. And the one wanted to start off with a bit of the positive side. I think it's important to recognize that we have come a long way. I think despite the criticism and the challenges we are seeing with regards to Paris Agreement, its implementation, it's also important to recognize that it has worked and it continues to work in terms of rallying the private sector, governments, civil society together around the shared goal. But then also the innovation we are seeing in particular in the private sector, in different areas, also with regards to instruments such as also on the market side. I think it's also important to recognize that, and it's important to recognize that this was thanks to this cornerstone agreement that really needs to remain at the heart of our international efforts. I mean, also in terms of, we have just seen the synthesis report coming out yesterday. I think also in terms of curbing the emissions, it was important that we are no longer on the same trajectory that prior to Paris Agreement. So there are important things that are working. But of course, we also need to recognize that there are significant gaps in terms of the mitigation ambition, in terms of adaptation, and in particular in terms of the financing. And I think this is what we have seen very clearly come through in the COP in Baku last year, and what will be again at the center of this discussion. So I think that's definitely then more of the negative side. I think the final really very difficult context point is really around the difficult geopolitical environment we're in. I won't go into the details. We all know exactly what we are dealing with, but it's important to keep that in mind. In particular, also coming out from the plastics negotiations in Geneva, from the IMO discussions in London just a few weeks ago. I think these definitely are important to keep in mind. And in addition, I think this year we also have a huge logistical challenges. And I think everyone that has been at COPs for several times, it is important. And I think in particular when then several key delegations, particularly from the developing countries, they're struggling to even send one person that can, of course, have an impact on the general mood that we are dealing with in Belém in a few days. But then overall, it's really hard to predict exactly how this conference will then turn out. And I think we have seen, particularly also in Brasilia, for the pre-COP 2 weeks ago, also heard it again today in a call, in a consultation with the Brazilian presidency. They are, while they are very much aware of the difficulty, they are also aware it's a very capable team. It's a team that shows a huge commitment to at least try and find these kind of bridging areas where there is an opportunity to bring countries together. I think we also need to keep an eye on where countries like China are coming into this conference. Of course, the role of the EU will also be important, and we are still hopeful that at least there are a few important progresses that can be made in a few areas. And that's maybe let's turn to the second slide. And these are really the ones that we feel that there is really a need and an opportunity to focus on. And it's really about now the shift needs to really happen on the implementing the commitments that are already made and now into really enabling policies and incentives on the ground. So again, we know about the NDCs, so there we will definitely be looking at on how the response to the indices that have been submitted, what that will be. I think these are really important, still very important plans for the private sector, and they will really depend on where and whether we invest. And so we also see there is a need for countries to closer come together in developing these with the private sector, and also where, as you mentioned, where there are important solutions and instruments such as carbon pricing are more and more important. Then, of course, the financing, and this remains really at the linchpin of the whole climate agenda, is really how we're gonna now implement and operationalize the new collective goal that was agreed in Baku. And I think you have heard about this Baku to Belém roadmap. I think it's a welcome process, but from our perspective, really needs to crystallize into something into a concrete implementation plan. So it's currently, we need to see the final report is coming, I think, expected now for next week. I think we need to see what it contains, but our call is very clear that it can't not just be a list of aspirational recommendation. It really needs to be, there needs to be a concrete discussion at COP on how these actions and recommendations can be implemented. And we also here need to see a focus on the private sector. I think we have been hearing a lot about the private sector that needs to step up in financing. I think we agree with the key role that we can play there, but it also needs to come with a discussion on the regulatory barriers and the climate environment in terms of the investment, because that's currently not favorable, and where we have been doing a lot of work there. And then also adaptation, of course, will be very high on the agenda. There needs to be a key decision on the implementation framework for the global goal on adaptation, the ACA GGA, and there as well we have seen very little discussion around the role of the private sector, around how these indicators can be developed and implemented in a way that they speak to the private sector, that they catalyze private sector capital and action. I think there's a lot of potential, but there needs to be further consideration. And then the point 4, I think this has already been addressed and we'll discuss later. I think definitely also on Article 6 and the voluntary carbon markets. I think there is lots of potential there, but we need to really see now a concerted effort to really operationalize and build the governance and also follow through with the outstanding standards and guidance that also create the enabling environment for the private sector to engage. So just a final point, I think this all really also links into a broader campaign that we have launched earlier today. And it's really about bringing a positive narrative to the climate agenda, in particular to this COP, where there is already many challenges, but we really want also to highlight the climate action is more and more also, it's no longer just about risk, about the responsibility, but also about an economic need and also an economic opportunity that many companies are seeing that. So there's a lot about innovation, about creating jobs, and about really tackling environmental challenges, but also with creating the growth and prosperity for everyone. Maybe let's turn to the next slide. So these are just a few of the key policy papers, deliverables that are very closely linked to these, to the priority I just outlined. The most important ones is really, we have been doing a lot of work in understanding exactly what these regulatory financial barriers are that currently hinder, in particular, banks from financing projects, in particular, even high quality projects that are supported by MDB guarantees. That there is still a problem there. So we have put together a group of key stakeholders there to understand that a little bit better, and have then outlined a few of the solution, even very short-term solution that we think are really implementable, and where we think also there should be a focus now in the discussion around scaling up climate finance from the private sector. So we will be heavily engaging on these solutions during the COP and in different climate finance discussion. Also, the adaptation piece I already mentioned. So here we did a lot on identifying what are the barriers that the private sector is currently facing with regards to adaptation and channeling more finance in there, and what are the kind of the enabling policies that could unlock more capital. And then the final one is really more on the VCM, and I think as IETA, also ICC supporting the VCM coalition, so UK, Kenya, Singapore coalition, where we support the principles, and then we are also planning separately a report together with Oxera in giving a bit more insights on the stages of carbon markets. Of course, also the trade climate discussion will be very at the center of the talks in Belém, where we were really trying to bring a bit more constructive engagement on these issues, and really calling for an engagement between Paris Agreement parties and also WTO members to find a suitable path forward on the issues. So I think I leave it there in terms of the policy aspect. Then most importantly, now turning to our plans on site. So if we move to the next slide. So as many of you know, we will have a strong in-person presence on site. So, and first time in partnership also with IETA, a pavilion in the blue zone, so the government zone. The main things really to mark your calendars, there will be again the daily business briefings. So from the beginning to the end of the conference, usually 9 to 10, we will reconfirm that. So those that know, we usually try to bring our different experts, so from government and business, to those discussions. There will be also several bilateral engagements with key negotiating countries and groups that we will organize throughout the 2 weeks, and then also, of course, with the focus on markets, to discuss anything related to there. Then there will be different event intervention statements, so usually the short ones in the plenaries, but we will also be able to speak in the different negotiating sessions. So we will share more about this during the briefings, and then really it's the key events that will be hosted in the ICC IETA space, in the blue zone, really around markets, but then there are also other ones on finance, NDC enhancement, and the energy transition, as well as critical minerals. As ICC, I think IETA as well, we are also actively engaging in the action agenda, so several opportunities there as well for businesses to engage. And then I think the last few slides are just pictures on the location. So we are still waiting for confirmation on our final location of the pavilion, but already putting here the map, how it currently looks like, and we will be sharing more details. And then I think I have 2 more pictures in terms of the current layout. So this will, of course, then change with then the ICC and IETA logos, as well as any other partners. And then just to mention as well that we will have ICC will, for the first time, we will have a ship harbored in Belém. I'm just mentioning this. There are a few slots still available in terms of any dinners, receptions, as well as CEO roundtables and any other activities. Please do reach out to me in case there is interest from your side. And then I think I will skip the last slides in terms of logistics. This is just to mention that we will be sharing a final logistics email with the whole bingo group. So if you are not on that list, please as well, I will try to put the link in the chat. Please sign up so you will receive that as well. And the very famous bingo WhatsApp group will also be available very soon, where we will be sharing further details then for all activities on site and throughout the conference. So we'll stop here and hand it back to you, Alessandro.
Thank you, Sandra. That's you're really making me anticipate getting down there to Belém even more now that I know you have a boat. I'll be climbing on board the first chance I get. Thank you for your presentation. Thanks for taking us through the ICC's priorities for COP. Before we move on to our panel discussion, I thought I'd give everybody the opportunity to pose a couple of questions to all the speakers that have come so far. And if I may, I'll kick off with a couple that have been written down into the chat room. And these concern IETA's trackers. So Andrea and Agustina, these are probably aimed at you. The first question from Laura is it possible to know the value disbursed by Switzerland and the price agreed for their agreements on Article 6.2, I guess it is?
So not in our tracker. We track the elements that are in the LOAs. So the price of the ITMOs is not one of those, at least not for the bilateral agreements, bilateral transfers Switzerland is involved in. My way to try and estimate the price of a Swiss deal is to check the Click Foundation annual report, and you at least can get an average price. So if you're referring to the deal specifically with Chile, I don't think there's anything available yet. And Agustin is shaking her head. I don't think the price is publicly available.
Okay, thank you. Second, not unrelated question is, are CORSIA pipeline projects listed in our letter of authorization directory?
So as I said, the unilateral LOAs are most likely ending up in the CORSIA markets. So if we're talking about the potential pipeline, yes, we track all those. We do not say whether the individual project is fully CORSIA eligible or not. That is determination that we don't do in our tracker.
Understood. And one slightly different question, but also on 6.2, you mentioned that the technical expert reviews of 6.2 activities are among the few Article 6 related items on the agenda. These were, Elizabeth says, these were completed in May for many countries, and so they've been out there for 6 months, and they mostly contained recommendations. What's the next step in that process? Are the 6.2 transactions evaluated by anybody else? Is there any way of working out the parties are not, quote unquote, cheating on their deals?
Maybe I can step in for this one. No, the technical expert review just give recommendations or highlights some inconsistencies, as you can check on the report. But the next steps is to follow the implementation of those recommendations. That meaning, if they submit a second or an updated review report, from that party, the UNFCCC Secretariat and the technical expert review team should check if that inconsistency or that recommendation was correctly received and put into order in the next document. So this is not going to be the recommendation from the technical expert review team, especially from the first review that took place last year, and the documents were published in May, June, around those dates. They are not in a way prohibited or forbidden to make transactions. There are only recommendations, and they will give some highlights to the buyers at the countries and also for host countries to continue improving the engagement and implementation of Article 6.2.
Apologies. A follow-up question here is that the only enforcement mechanism of the Paris Agreement, which is known as the Facilitative Multilateral Consideration of Progress, is meeting in Belém, and the progress towards NDCs of certain parties is up for review. So this is like a peer-reviewed transparency report. Is there any more information about this process? Do we know any more about what the decisions might be, what the considerations are?
So that's not something we track at IETA. Maybe Sandra at ICC. Is this something you have more information about?
I have heard about it, but I must say as well that we were not aware that there are discussions planned at COP. I mean, the only thing that we are hearing that there are several developed countries and high ambition countries that want to have a conversation on the stages of NDCs, the 3.0, and some kind of agreement on the way forward to have some kind of a mechanism work program in addition to the existing one, to really have a further conversation on how countries can more closely collaborate on achieving their NDCs.
Thank you. Given that there are no other questions currently in the chat box, I'd like to step on to the next item on our agenda and welcome our own President and CEO, Dirk Forrister, who's going to moderate a panel discussion. And would you also care to introduce our guests? Dirk, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Alessandro, and I'll invite my panelists to turn your cameras on. I'm really delighted that you guys could join us today, just to maybe add a little color to the conversations around this COP. And maybe I'll just introduce you as we go along, or no, I can do it here since they're on the screen. I've got Marina Pitella, who is, we're delighted, Marina, that you can join us from the Brazilian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and she's the head of the Carbon Accounting Coordination Unit, so someone that we have interacted with a good bit and topics in and around Article 6 over time. Julia Carbone is with us from the WBCSD's Nature for Climate program, again, a frequent collaborator with us in the nature space. Mark Kember, the Executive Director of VCMI and the lead of the Secretariat for the Coalition to Grow Carbon Markets, something that we're all keen to learn more about. Kazuhisa Kawakutsu, sorry, Kazu, from the Article 6 Implementation Partnership Center in Japan, and then Ritika Tewari, who is with us from the Project Developer Forum, but also a very active member of IETA. And Marina, I think I'll start with you if it's okay. We've got a great preview here by the ICC and IETA teams on sort of the policy outlook, but from the presidency's perspective there in Brazil, first of all, we're deeply indebted to you guys for all of the hard work in preparing for this COP. But as you think about the carbon market agenda and what the carbon markets community should be watching for in COP30, can you give us a sense of the presidency's priorities for this one, understanding that a lot of the policy work is now moving into implementation? What should we look for at this COP?
Well, thank you. And thank you very much for the invitation to be here and to listen also about the policy paper that was published by IETA. I think Andrea did a good presentation on the topics that we'll have on the negotiating track. So I thought that first just give a brief comment on that and to say from the COP30 presidency perspective and how this has been built for the past year. This will be a year where Article 6 negotiators will come together in a non-negotiated mode. So for the past 10 years, it was very intensive on finalizing the rules, modalities, and procedures. And now we are at a point to discuss on how this implementation is going. So I saw the questions raised on Article 6.2. We have a perception that we don't have enough volume also at this moment for Article 6.2 activities to give consistent guidance. I think it's a work in progress. It will be a moment for parties to share some of their assessments based on the report that will be published by the Secretariat. But really, we'll be building up this work for 2028. We're expected to review on this. On Article 6.4, we will be presented with the report of the supervisory body mechanism. There were discussions throughout this year on the standards on that, and we understand that this has generated a lot of inputs from various stakeholders, and the SBM has taken into account on this. So we expect that the discussions will be focusing on the assessment of the parties on the work and the progress of the SBM to advance PACAM, and also the questions regarding the financial status. And then it really comes into what we expect will be the negotiating item under this market cluster. I believe most of you are aware that during the SB meetings in Bonn, we have come to draft decision, and that conclusion should be forwarded by Belém. This draft text contain in brackets options for end dates for the issuance and of CR for the transition of CDM projects. There is a question of funding that then it relates on how to fund. Some parties would want this to fund the 6.4 mechanism. Some parties would want this to go to the adaptation funds, and there are solutions in between. So we expected this to be the negotiating item, and negotiators will also be covering the non-market track on Article 6.8. So this is my comment for the negotiated track, the negotiated outcomes. For the interest of the carbon markets community, we'll have two different spaces. So first we'll have the Belém Climate Summit next week, 6 or 7. It's a priority for the joint work of the Ministry of Finance of Brazil and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Brazil to announce an open coalition for compliance carbon markets. This is an endeavor that we have developed also in the context of the action agenda, but we feel that there is an opportunity for leaders to come together and to reflect on the role of compliance carbon markets for implementing climate action. There is a timely also occasion for this, as many developing countries are rolling out their own emission trading systems, and notably Brazil. We are in this point with important developments throughout this year. So we passed legislation last year, the announcement of a new secretariat under the Ministry of Finance that will act as interim management body for the Brazilian ETS was just announced in October. And there are other developing countries that are engaging in or either ETS or carbon pricing mechanism, which we believe changes the landscape and also makes on the importance for those countries to come together to support each other on the implementation, and to also work towards a common vision on how to promote interoperability, how to promote common standards, how to promote in a vision of convergence of this mechanism. So we expect this to be a feature in the Belém Climate Summit. Within the context of the action agenda, we have been working under Activation Group 23. Many of the stakeholders, IETA is present in our group, and others from the panel as well. And the goals that the COP30 presidency has set for this activation group was to promote harmonization of carbon markets and carbon accounting standards. And this is also this vision of promoting alignment convergence to provide scalability to carbon markets, to provide for high integrity, and also to enable transition to a low carbon economy. So in this sense, we expect to reflect this work of the Open Coalition, and also a dedicated acceleration plan, a plan of accelerated solutions on carbon accounting. And we have been working with partners on this. The proposal of this acceleration plan is to emphasize the challenges that we have in this context of a proliferation of frameworks that sometimes don't interact between each others and actually hinders comparability. So how we can promote this further comparability, and how we can have a more consistent approach to assess emissions also at product, entity, facility, and project level. and what should be done, especially also to promote the broader bioeconomy and nature-based solutions. How can we have frameworks that assess the environmental integrity this, but can also promote important sectors such as forestry and bio-based solutions and tropical agriculture. So this is really a call to actions on how initiatives can come together into this. There were important announcements throughout the year for this. You had the ISO and GHG protocol partnership coming together. You have also initiatives coming from the private sector on this. And we thought that it was important for the action agenda to host the discussion and also serve as a platform for future engagement with this vision of alignment. The action agenda has also welcomed a plan of acceleration of solutions that came from different stakeholders. So we have other announcements that will be featured into this package of the Group 23. I'm sure Market will also share on their initiatives, and so we expect to have also this package, and we're really in the final moments of finishing the plan of accelerated solution. At this point, we expect to receive 3 more that are from stakeholders, and then to present this as decisions of stakeholders coming together to promote carbon markets, promote their scalability, integrate them into national governments' visions on how to transform their economy in Brazil. We have this ecological transformation plan. So integrating carbon markets into this industrial policies and other, it's very key to us. And we believe COP30 as an implementation COP should also put all these initiatives together and leverage them. So thank you for the opportunity to share, and I welcome the debate with the colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Thanks very much. And really, there's something for everyone there. But I think this notion of having a COP right at the mouth of the Amazon and with the rainforests all around us, that the role of nature tying in, and also this effort to harmonize and improve the accounting system so we have that transparency and accountability. It's sort of music to our ears, because we do know that that's what it takes to really scale. So thank you for that hard work. Julia, I want to bring you in here to maybe expand on that theme around the potential for nature and how you see the interaction between carbon markets and nature playing out at this COP. Again, an implementation COP, as Marina has underscored, and Marcelo sort of set the stage for us early on about how important it is to be in the Amazon region for this COP.
No, absolutely. You said it, Dirk, and it's such a great opportunity to be in Brazil, in the heart of, the nature that is not only linked to biodiversity and people, but has always been the representation of the planet, our planet lungs, and the need of, how nature, the role that nature plays in climate, in mitigating climate change and adapting to climate change. So I think it's a huge opportunity. The fact that there is no official negotiation, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that there is going to be tons of conversations about the voluntary carbon market and nature. Now, for me, I come from the nature space. I lead the Natural Climate Solution Alliance, but I think speaking about nature with the voluntary carbon market also helps us understand that the voluntary carbon market is not the end, is a means to something else. And in this case, is a means to finance certain nature mitigation actions, such as protection of nature or restoration of nature, including, improving management for activities that would otherwise not be financed, right? So, for example, in the Amazon, we have the amazing stories of REDD+, jurisdictional REDD+, in areas and for communities that wouldn't have any alternative other than voluntary carbon markets. So I think this is an incredible opportunity. And in terms of looking at numbers, I was trying to collect a little bit of, to understand how much conversation is going to be. We have a common friend who's collecting all the information about public events that talk about nature and climate. And there are going to be at least 780 public events that we have identified, of which around 60 focus specifically on carbon finance. Then there is a Nature Hub pavilion that will run for the entire time of the COP. And in the blue zone, where they're going to have 45 events, a whole day on the voluntary carbon market as a way to finance nature. And there are going to be a number of other big announcements, which some of us also will make. But so it is really an incredible opportunity. As WBCSD Natural Climate Solution Alliance, what we have done to support this conversation and to help especially businesses, but also other stakeholders. But our main stakeholder is our 250 members of the World Business Council, is to prepare them and to be knowledgeable, to be part of this conversation. So we organized a mega program of webinars that we call actually Nature at Work, Natural Climate Solutions from Brazil, which included 14 stories from Brazil where the voluntary carbon market has been successful in protecting or restoring nature. And we have done this with partners from Brazil. Most of them were also translated. We had a lot of indigenous people speaking, 600 participants that were able to learn from our colleagues in Brazil. What does it mean using the voluntary carbon market to finance nature? And with that knowledge, we also have developed some key policy asks, which we know there is no negotiation. Plus, WBCSD is not part of the negotiation, but we wanted to, equip our members with some key ask if they get into the conversation with policymakers and negotiator. And I tell you the three main headings, because for us, these are the central. And we did a lot of conversation internally about what are the key messages. First one is, again, unlock finance for nature-based solutions to carbon markets, which is really about also including this type of finance in NDCs. And there is actually a very interesting analysis done on NDC. I was going to tell your colleagues that you guys are doing the tracker. You should work with Nature for Climate, who's doing the tracker for NDCs on how much nature-based solutions have been integrated. So that could be a great complement. Then we also have, of course, the second one, very important, ensure equity and inclusion in carbon markets for indigenous peoples in local communities, not only as beneficiary, but as full-fledged partners. And last but not least, and we know it's not going to be part of the conversation, but it's important to keep up it's not going to be part of the negotiation, but it's important to keep it up as a conversation, is the inclusion of nature as a climate solution in Article 6.4. We are all aware of, the big discussions that have happened in like a couple of weeks ago. I think there was a great success for nature and all those actors that are very, the science-based actors that have been, involved, the conservation organization, but we shouldn't let go of that, little win that we had. It's really important to make sure that the governments understand the importance of Article 6.4 and what they could make or break if they don't go in the right direction in terms of recognizing nature. I have a couple announcements, but I think I'll wait for maybe a second question to mention those.
Okay, we will definitely come back in a few minutes for announcements, but thanks for framing out the role of nature there. And I do expect with all of those events, it's making me feel like I hope like that gives everybody in the community an opportunity to speak somewhere with that many nature events happening in and around the COP. So we'll look forward to that. Mark, I want to come to you next. Mark Kimber. We're looking forward to some exciting announcements coming up related to the Coalition to Grow Carbon Markets. And this is I think, making a real major step forward in giving some structure around and policy support for voluntarism and climate change. So you sort of straddle these two organizations. Tell us what you guys have coming up and what we should watch for in Belém.
Yeah, thanks, Dirk, and thanks for the invitation to be with you all today. I think, as Marina mentioned, and I think it's important that the role of governments increasingly in coordinating, in structuring, and giving signals about carbon markets and also about interoperability is crucial. At a previous IETA webinar, I presented some market research that VCMI had conducted earlier this year that showed that there is a lot of latent corporate demand for carbon credits, whether they are authorized or unauthorized and for different use cases, but they are looking for stable, clear, and consistent guidance, whether that be from the voluntary frameworks like SBTi or ISO, but much more importantly from governments. They need that government signal, whether it be through incentives, policies, regulations, or something else that creates a business case to invest in carbon credits. And I think we're seeing the fruition of some of those initiatives coming up to COP30. Now, the one obviously VCMI and IETA and others are involved, and WBCSD are involved in, is the Coalition to Grow Carbon Markets. That was launched by the governments of Kenya, Singapore, and the United Kingdom in June this year, and immediately France and Panama joined. And the first major output of that coalition will be launched at COP, and that is two complementary products, a set of shared principles, which are the governments together saying, this is how we believe, why we believe that companies should engage with carbon credit markets, and how they should do so in a way that is considered high integrity and responsible. And briefly, that's shorthand for using high quality credits, but also saying you need to decarbonize and use carbon credits. And that's something obviously IETA has worked a lot on as well, how giving guidance to companies on that. So this is a government-led initiative giving guidance on how companies should use credits, showing that it's both and internal mitigation and use of carbon credits. But it's not just, they're not only launching the set of principles, and I think, I probably to this audience, if I said another set of principles is being launched, people will go, really? Is that the best you can do? And so what they're doing also is launching a plan of action for the next 3 years, which complements what they're saying, what the governments are saying companies should do, by saying this is what we as governments are going to do. And obviously that's under embargo until next week, but it's going to lay out areas where governments collectively and individually, and then in conjunction with the business and investor community and broader non-state actors, how they can look at what's the enabling environment for liquid scalable markets. How do we create the interoperability, which Marina mentioned in the case of emissions trading schemes, so important that companies who often operating in tens, if not hundreds of markets, don't have to navigate different sets of rules everywhere, that the guidance is broadly aligned across different countries, while recognizing that different sectors, different regions will have different needs and different abilities to decarbonize and use carbon credits. So those are going to be announced initially next week, and then there's an event at COP30 on Monday the 10th. We're also working with Marina and the Action Agenda team to look at how we can have an event that shows how these different initiatives come together. And I think it's interesting that there are at least 2 or 3 initiatives where governments are working with the private sector outside the negotiating space. And this goes to this theme that everyone's mentioned about implementation. We know that, and your colleagues have shown how in NDCs, use of Article 6 and carbon finance is increasingly important. It would be quite surprising to find more than a handful of countries that don't have some use of carbon markets or carbon pricing in their NDC 3.0. And I think there's also an increasing recognition that, and this is why often I think the term voluntary carbon market itself is not as useful as it once was. There are a range of use cases. And when you look at the governments, there are governments that don't want to have carbon credits, sell carbon credits, host carbon credit projects, either unauthorized credits, so the mitigation outcomes stay with the host country and help contribute to achieving their NDCs. But there are others that are looking to sell ITMOs with corresponding adjustments, because that maybe sells at a higher price, or they've got more ability to sell overseas. And likewise, on the buy side, there are countries that want authorized ITMOs to meet their NDCs, but others, and I think there's an initiative that being talked about in the coming weeks, where countries are saying we'll go above and beyond our commitments, and therefore they may or may not be authorized. And it's the same for companies. There are some who are still doing it for purely voluntary purposes, brand reputation enhancement, or because they've made commitments. Others that want to be able to use carbon credits to either meet targets or bridge the gap to targets. We know from our COP30 guidance earlier this year, where it's difficult for companies always to be on track for how they use carbon credits to meet those targets. And then more policy-related ones. We know about the carbon tax scheme that several countries have, which IETA also tracks, where companies can use carbon credits voluntarily to meet a compliance obligation. So that's voluntary use, but part of a regulated obligation. And so I think it's better to think about use cases across the voluntary and regulated space. And I think looking at the preliminary list of events that I've seen at COP30, the announcements, conversations we've had in Action Agenda Activation Group 23, there is a lot of interest. I think there's a lot of movement that I'm grateful to see, from more theoretical conversations to how do we make this work? And if I had one wish for COP30 is that people come away saying, okay, it's worth trying things. It's not always going to be perfect, but as long as we have feedback mechanisms where we learn, and therefore, something we've all said in the past, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. If we get something good, how do we make it better? And that's what implementation is about.
Thanks, Mark. And really, thanks for underscoring that point about I guess it's this gradual convergence of compliance and voluntary markets. And I do think the words of, especially around voluntary, are kind of, they can be twisted so many ways that it's really almost more important just to talk about these the carbon credit universe and the different use cases, because it can be valuable in a variety of places. And I think it's a really healthy development. So thanks for your work in that sphere. And Kazu, I want to bring you in next, talk a little bit about the Article 6 implementation partnerships efforts to kind of keep track of all of the collaborations going on in Article 6, but also providing kind of platforms for encouraging more action. And I know you were also, I think you were addressing the G7's recent meetings and their carbon markets platform, where a number of the countries working in compliance markets are gathered. So give us a sense of what you're hoping to achieve in Belém, and what do you think is the state of implementation on the Article 6 side? Are we healthy, or are we suffering growing pains? Where are we? Kazu.
Thank you, Dirk. And first of all, very good evening from Japan, and thank you for extending invitation, and happy to be also here, and also looking forward to COP30 in Belém. So recently, our center, A6IP, has released Article 6 implementation status report, which also kind of capture the global status of Article 6 implementation. And some of the outcomes are kind of very much kind of close to what IETA's recent report also shown. But I just wanted to share also the kind of 7 key takeaways from these reports, and also some of the kind of our views on towards COP30. First of all, we have kind of looked through the around 100 countries, and among 100 countries, we see 85 countries are now under the authorization and tracking arrangements underway, which shows growing implementation arrangements is currently happening around the globe. Of which 100 countries, 30 countries have been submitted initial reports. So I think still we see still limited kind of progress in terms of Article 6. But when we are really compare from the last year, the initial report submission, it was doubled. And we are also seeing the more submission of the initial report on Article 6. So I think things are growing in the right direction, but I think the pace is slow. So I think we really need to recognize to really accelerate the space to make the things happen. The second point is really we are seeing the expanding Article 6 bilateral cooperation. Maybe this is something we are also feeling. Around 99 bilateral agreements, so almost like 100 agreements now happening around the globe among 61 parties engaged, signing on this. So I think bilateral engagement is really kind of leading the way in terms of Article 6 space. And I really kind of encourage to see, like 100 agreements already happening, and then among which we are really hoping to have much more mitigations is happening. But at the same time, there is also the 6.4 mechanism uptake, already kind of mentioned by Marina. And we have also seen the growing momentum coming. And also see the over 1,000 prior consideration submitted already, which seems to be like kind of new projects is coming, which is also kind of encouraging. And also we see the 92 projects from CDM host country approval among 1,500 projects being submitted. So overall, I think we are seeing more growing momentum in terms of coming for the Article 6.4 new projects. And we are really hoping more methodologies needs to be available for 6.4. And something we really need to encourage more in terms of the process to make it methodology available. And the fourth point is also maybe Mark mentioned about the kind of voluntary carbon market. Nowadays also called independent creating standard or verified creating standards in more aligning Article 6 because some of those mitigation outcomes are authorized. We already seen like 8 letters of authorization. Maybe that is also tracked by IETA's LOA trackers for the Vera and Gold Standard and Actries, which also seeing now we are kind of looking at both voluntary compliance, but the same standard also be used. So that could be, for a variety of purposes. Which also contribute to the more NDC ambition. So we see a more growing kind of role in this space. And the fifth point, we also did a survey for private sector. What they are really looking is more clarity. So clarity in terms of ITOMOS, legal clarity, government guidance on the domestic market and international market and what's happening in authorization, what needs to be done, and what is about the financing. So I think private sector is really looking for more clarity, which I think government needs to also respond. And we see also many kind of domestic degree regulations around ITOMOS authorization is growing. So I really think the government really take a lead to this one. The sixth point is the capacity building effort also growing, especially for high integrity carbon market space. So we see 96 carbon market capacity building initiatives, which also kind of 7 parties are also receiving somewhat the kind of support from various kind of activities. So we really need to kind of use those opportunities to make those elements moving forward. And the last but not least, the NDC ambition. Of course, this is a very important topic for this year in 2025 in Belém. And we see the growing NDCs mentioning about Article 6. Our record shows the 63% of the NDCs mentioned about Article 6. Again, this is very encouraging in a way that the parties are now recognizing. They are kind of mentioning clearly where, like what is the technology, what sector, and how they really wanted to use this international cooperation to really enhance. So that's the kind of so I think COP30 is very important to enhance NDC for the parties, and then for us, many private sector really look for more new projects. What do we wanted to achieve? So I think we really need to come up with inventory of solutions, and I think we should also show the multilateralism to work. And I think nature could be also a very important part of this COP. So we really need to also utilize various sectors, including nature, to be available for the Article 6 and carbon market. So I really see the action agenda item, also mentioned by Marina, will be a very good kind of way forward. And we really need to look for the implementation COP, as well as how we can realize this through the COP outcome, through the action agenda. Is something, yeah, we are really hoping a good outcome from this. Thank you.
Thanks, Kazu, and really appreciate the continued collaboration and working with governments on standing up systems. And I think we all have a lot of interest in how this action agenda item plays out on improving coordination. I know that's sort of part of what the Article 6 implementation partnership was set up to do, was to coordinate a lot of the capacity building around it, but it's really taking off now so that we're actually seeing systems come to the fore, and learning how they connect is going to be vitally important. Ritika, I want to bring you in here now to maybe give us an assessment, since this is an implementation COP, of how you see the PACM itself operationalizing, a mouthful of a word there, and maybe how can COP30 improve things. And I'm sure you've gotten a chance maybe to glance down the questions. I know this is the one that comes out of Gray Maguire's question too, about have we got workable structures coming out of the PACM right now, or have they set up an approach to permanence that's unworkable? Give us some flavor of where you think the project development community is on these topics.
Sure. Thank you, Dirk, and thank you for inviting me to this panel. It's so interesting to hear so many sort of overlapping perspectives on what needs to be done, right? Very encouraging. My name is Ritika Tiwari. I'm speaking today on behalf of the Project Developer Forum, which is an association representing 60 organizations that develop emission reductions and removal projects worldwide, right? I personally and PD Forum has been following PACM throughout 2025. I've personally attended 2 of the 4 meetings that have happened so far, and have provided inputs to this process. So much of my reflections are coming from on the status of operationalization, are coming from being an observer to this process, right? I want to start and actually compliment Kazuhisa-san on his take on where PACM stands. I do think 2025 marks a year of very rapid operationalization of PACM. The supervisory body, which is the governing body of PACM, has moved remarkably fast in setting the basic structure of rules and regulatory documents in place. As we speak, the SBM is meeting right now and discussing the first methodology under the standard, which will likely be approved this year, and that will mark the first PACM methodology. Also, much of the sort of regulatory standards, the package of standards that determine how you develop projects and what rules should methodologies follow, like the baseline standard, additionality standard, and so on and so forth, are now in place. Are nearly complete. So that's progress on the part of sort of generating first units. The first set of projects coming from PACM, as Kazuhisa-san said, are CDM projects that have been approved by host countries and by the supervisory body to re-register. There are about a dozen such projects that are registered, although the overall number is fairly low compared to the 1,500 odd projects that actually aspired for that flexibility that parties provided them. But together, these create, in my view, a foundation for a functioning standard that is capable of generating units, carbon credits in 2026, supporting the ambition that countries have on markets supporting NDC implementation in this current NDC period, right? But that brings me to the next frontier, right? With these sort of rule and architecture in place, the next challenge is really implementation at scale, right? How do you achieve scale to this? And there we have a few observations, I think, in the way PACM is operationalizing, right? It's important, I think, to admit that PACM is a novel standard in many ways, right? It's introducing several ambitious accounting features, to say the least, which are new to the market. And these include the way baselines should be set, the way they should be adjusted downwards, the way they should be progressively declined, and they should progressively decline as the crediting period passes. And then at several layers of different regulatory documents, there is conservativeness and integrity embedded, which is a great thing, right? That is what markets are hoping for, that clarity. But while these elements embed ambition structurally in the standard, the risk that I'm seeing is that their combined effects are not yet tested, right? So what do I mean by that? In my view, the standard setting process in PACM is missing a critical step of calibration to assess all the impacts that the package of measures added across different standards has on feasibility and economic viability of projects on the ground. Earlier this year, PD Forum and IETA co-submitted analytical work that PD Forum carried out in applying PACM's rules into a test project. This was a case study which we provided to the supervisory body as an input to essentially share a conclusion that we had from the study, which was that we are seeing a sort of a risk that the pendulum may be swinging too far towards overcorrection, right? And so other than, of course, introduction of what I'm saying are multiple layers of adjustments without cross-checking the cumulative impact on economic feasibility, looking at the first methodology that is up for discussion, there also seems to be a preference of using global defaults over country-specific or context-specific parameters, right? And that's another slightly worrying, if it's a trend, it's a worrying trend, because PACM's impact, in our view, also depend on how it promotes accuracy and in what way does it champion host country ownership in the spirit of the Paris Agreement, right? In fact, this need for reflecting on national and local circumstances is also included in the rules, modalities, and procedures that parties have agreed to for Article 6.4. So in our view, allowing the use of nationally approved or officially published parameters, and where possible, prioritizing accurate measurement-based approaches, not just strengthen precision, they also uphold host country ownership, and they also help in supporting what many of the co-panelists were talking, harmonization, right? Harmonizing project level accounting with national MRV and NDC implementation approaches in the bottom-up manner, in the bottom-up spirit of the Paris Agreement. I think my wider point is this, that PACM's ambition in our reading in 2026 needs to be anchored in realism. And we hope that in 2026, PACM's implementation can find its Goldilocks zone, where rigor meets workability, so that we can ensure that both integrity and scalability of mitigation outcomes can actually happen hand in hand. I'm aware of that we are short of time, but I don't know, Dirk, if we have a few more minutes. I have some observations related to process and governance. I see several important stakeholders here critical to the COP process, and I wouldn't want to miss that opportunity.
Sure, as long as you keep it really tight, I would love to hear.
Certainly. Thank you, Dirk. So I think just a few observations on process and governance, right? My point perhaps is that market, we need to realize that with PACM, and the whole Paris alignment of voluntary standards and so on, market now faces a steep learning curve. We should accept that, I think, right? And PACM's processes and governance and rulemaking as they have been so far, in my reading, needs to also evolve as we enter into operationalizing. I want to give two concrete examples, right? Right now, the inputs to the standards and rulemaking processes are one-off, time-bound, called for inputs. But for a standard that's this much data intensive, both project developers and host countries need time to absorb the changes and understand the rationales behind decision making. That doesn't happen in the current process because the timelines are fairly short to review, to provide feedback, and also some of the critical meetings in this process, which is of the methodological expert panel that is making technical decisions on methodological products, are not webcasted. So you have a lag between in translating the rules into a common shared understanding that the market can absorb and imbibe and move forward with. So I guess, and I want to stress here that the ask for transparency is not a critique, right? I think the more people can see and understand what are the expectations of the standard, the faster implementation would follow. It'll actually help market internalize what's changing. So I want to conclude by just looking ahead at COP30, where I understand that parties would again have a chance to be able to provide direction to the supervisory body and the PACM governing frameworks on the future. I hope that parties can in their suggestions support and provide guidance around balancing the speed of decision making with accessibility and transparency in the process, and to institutionalize mechanisms such as relying on external expert groups, engaging a wider set of expert communities, so that we can actually arrive at an interpretation of Paris alignment that is coming from a community of practice more generally. I'll stop there, Dirk.
I think that's really important because proper standard setting process should include all perspectives. And right now, I think there's been some evidence of bias that we really need to guard against. So there are some process challenges as we move ahead. So we're out of time. Julia, I know you had an announcement you wanted to make. And then Alessandro, I think I better leave it to you on how you want to handle remaining questions, because I know we're over time. Julia, can I up for that?
Oh, well, I mean, now it sounds like I need the drum beat or anything. No. It's not mega announcement. It's just that couple of things that WBCSD is doing, and I think we are very proud that our role in catalyzing members. Well, the first one is really about we were going to launch our nature portal at Climate COP. Right, so really to show the connection between the two crises, basically. So that is really an opportunity for business to learn about biodiversity, their own footprint, how to use metrics, and so on. And this will be launched virtually around COP. And then the second one is that we also submitted a plan to accelerate action, and we are very proud of having done this also, with support from the Climate Champion. And this is going to focus on catalyzing, or basically helping businesses learn how to travel the journey to purchase removals. And we know it's not an easy it's not an easy journey to make, especially the business case, to understand why they have to buy it now and not wait in 2050, what types, how they count, the accounting, and all the different questions that businesses have. So in the end, we decided to be part of this is Action Agenda 3. And so we are very excited about that, because we're going to bring, be able to bring a lot of companies to the, to be part of this conversation. So I leave it to that. I hope to meet, well, actually, I hope my colleagues from WBCSD, because I'm not going to be there, gonna meet many of you.
You. Okay, Alessandro, over to you. And Mark, thanks. I know you need to go too, so we'll allow you to bow out. Thanks so much for joining.
Thanks very much. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you, Dirk, and thank you to all of our panelists for staying with us and for sharing your insights and your time. Given that we are 6 minutes over, I think it's the safest thing to do is to give everybody back some time so they can get on with their pre-COP preparations and other meetings that they have to go to. But thank you for joining us. Thank you to our panelists and to our speakers. Please keep up with IETA on our website. We will be reporting back from COP every day. And we look forward to seeing you for the post-COP debrief in late November. Thanks very much, everybody, and have a great afternoon or